For all the angst about the Philadelphia Phillies offseason, I'm going to tell you on today's episode why their roster is better today than they were when they started the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network, Locked On Phillies, your number one place for regular offseason Philadelphia Phillies content. Appreciate you joining us. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philly for over 6 years. Been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons. And this is now my 5th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. We're going to start off today's episode with what I mentioned in the intro. Is this Phillies team today better than the team that they rolled into the season with in 2025? That team won 96 games, had the second best record in baseball, won the NL East for the second straight year, obviously didn't have the postseason success. But they were a great team, right? At least in the regular season sphere. And when you look at the roster this year, I'm going to argue that the 26 Phillies are already set to be better than the 2025 Phillies as a whole. But we'll break down the individual parts of the team and the individual players. We're also going to react to the news of the Mets acquiring Freddy Peralta in a blockbuster deal with the Milwaukee Brewers. How much does this change the way that you look at the NL East? And where's the worry level when focusing on the other 2 divisional title contenders in the NL East? All due respect to the Marlins and Nationals, we're going to mostly be looking at the Braves and the Mets in that segment. And then we're going to wrap up with our off-the-poll results. I asked you, of the 4 players, Phillies legends, currently on the Hall of Fame ballot, none of them getting in this year, who do you believe most likely or most deserves to get in between Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, Bobby Abreu, and Cole Hamels? So a lot to get into on today's episode, but I want to start with this exercise on the 2026 Phillies compared to the 2025 Phillies. I am not telling you you're wrong for being upset with the offseason. I'm not telling you you should be, to use Dave Dombrowski's word, content with where the Philadelphia Phillies roster is. I'm upset that they haven't done more. I'm upset that they didn't explore trade possibilities for Bohm, Stott, Marsh. I'm upset that they didn't take a bigger swing at bigger name free agents outside of Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto. I mean, I guess they took a huge swing at Bo Bichette, but much like their offense in the postseason the past couple of years, it was a swing and a miss. But all of that being said, let's objectively look at where the Phillies are today compared to where they were to start the 2025 season, because that's all we can do. The trade deadline still exists. The Phillies can still go out and win a bunch of games to start the season and say, oh, we have another real bona fide chance. Remember, Juan Duran acquired at the trade deadline. Harrison Bader acquired at the trade deadline. There have been recent moves that you can point to that were needle movers at the deadline. So this is not a set roster, but we're looking at today versus when the 2025 season started. Let's start with the bullpen, because this is an easy one. The Philadelphia Phillies bullpen today is so much better than what it was starting the season last year, even really throughout this season last year. You have Juan Duran for the full year, automatically a better situation. Brad Keller, you add in the offseason, well, you had Jordan Romano and Joe Ross. And like that team had a mess of a bullpen to start the season, where they were blowing games left and right. Jose Ruiz was back there, who had a great year in 2024, did not follow that up with a great year in 2025. They did not have the horses. The Phillies this year in the bullpen are significantly improved. There's no doubt that they have a better bullpen, but you got to get to the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning to use that. So it's just a small piece of the puzzle. But if you are going to say, oh, actually, the 2025 Phillies had the better bullpen, I'm going to ask you to get your head examined. I think that's a place we can all agree. But as I've learned doing sports talk in this town for a while, I know there's nothing that we can all agree on. So if you think I'm crazy on that one, you can let me know in the comments. And I'd love your thoughts on all of my evaluations of this conversation as to whether or not the 26 Phillies are better than the 25 Phillies. All purely projection, theoretical at this point, because the 26 Phillies have not played a game. They haven't even reported the spring training. But let's move on. The starting rotation is where this starts to get really interesting because the bullpen's a lot better in 26. Let's start with Christopher Sanchez. I think he's about a neutral mark compared to what he did last year for multiple reasons. A lot of people would look at Sanchez with the incredible Cy Young runner-up year and say, prime regression candidate. Here's why I believe why not. His velocity has increased year over year for the past 3 years. He has been incredibly durable. He's got a great 1-2 pitch combination that people still haven't figured out with that fastball and changeup, which I still think is the best changeup in baseball. He has a very repeatable, comfortable, low-stress delivery. He has the makeup to continue to be great. He has not had a down season, really. He's had arrow up since he started to have his breakout stretch. So I think Christopher Sanchez, to expect him to do more would be unfair. To think he could have the same season, I don't think is crazy. I think that's about where the bar is at for Sanchez. That wasn't a flash in the pan year. That was hey, he's capable of this year. So we'll put him as neutral. Right now, the bullpen is a positive. Christopher Sanchez is a neutral. Zach Wheeler's interesting because he ended up missing like a month and a half of the regular season last year after he went down with the shoulder issue that then turned into the blood clots, that then turned into the issue that cost him the rest of the year, right? But if he comes back after missing a month and a half of this season, which is right about where the projections are for what he's going to miss, and if he's healthy and good, well, he'd miss generally the same amount of time as he did last year. There's a chance that you end up seeing Wheeler throw the same amount of innings this year as he did last year. But that's a small chance. And what level of Wheeler are we going to get? I can't say that he's going to be the same guy. So Wheeler, that spot in the rotation, I'm going to say not as good. Ranger Suarez to Andrew Painter. I can't possibly, no matter how much I like Andrew Painter's profile as a top pitching prospect, say that he's going to roll into this rotation and do what Ranger Suarez did last year. It's just not realistic. So that's another downturn. So slight downturn on Wheeler, noticeable downturn from Ranger to Andrew Painter. I think Luzardo is another guy that you look at, and this guy actually is a prime regression candidate because he had a career high in innings last year, career high of strikeouts last year. You just haven't seen him be that guy. He's a career 4-something ERA guy. Now, could it be, hey, pitched in Oakland, pitched in Miami, comes to Philadelphia, plays for a contending team, maybe that gets him going a little bit. I don't know. I don't know how much the environment, how much Caleb Cotham helped him, but I don't expect him to have the same year. So slight downturn for him as well. Nola, I'm looking at as a positive trend because there's no way he's worse. There's just no way he's worse. He had the worst season of his career, and it probably, on the day he retires, will end up being the worst season of his career unless he pitches till he's like 70. Like Nola's 2025 was a nightmare. You have to assume he's going to get better. So you have 1 neutral, 1 positive, and 3 negative with the rotation. Just keep a little mental tally on how you're feeling. You might say, okay, well, the bullpen's better, but the rotation could be worse. The position players are the ones that make the difference. So let's run through positionally, starting from catcher position. JT Realmuto, he's on the downside of his career. He had a rough start to the season, really strong second half, another year, more wear and tear on him. I can't expect him to have a better year. In fact, I can't expect him to have an equal year. That is someone who's on the downtrend. First base, Harper. I think it's very realistic to expect a bounce back year from Bryce Harper. All we've been seeing with the not elite sweatshirt and the motivation to get in the gym, putting on more muscle, he had an uncharacteristically, I don't want to say bad year because he wasn't bad, non-impactful year for what Bryce Harper is supposed to be. So I believe that Bryce Harper is going to have a better year. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean MVP caliber season? I don't believe so. Does that mean all-star caliber season? Maybe. But is it better than last year? I feel very confident in saying Bryce Harper is going to be better this year than he was last year. The Bryson Stott, Edmundo Sosa thing at second base, neutral. There's no change there. Those guys are what they are. They have their upsides. They have their downsides. Trey Turner, this is going to be an interesting argument at shortstop. I think he's going to be a net neutral. When you look at the numbers he's put up through his career and the bat-to-ball contact rate that he's been able to show with his batting average, his on-base percentage, all of those numbers that have made him an all-MLB or at least an all-star caliber player, he was right about on par with those last year. I think because of the first year in Philadelphia, we have lowered the bar so much on what he normally is that we don't realize that the Trey Turner you got who led the National League in batting average is just kind of the guy he's always been. So I think he's going to be essentially the same player. At third base, Alec Bohm, I expect a better year. You know why? Money. Because he's going to be a free agent next year. And this is his prove-it year to try and earn a lot of money. And if you've seen the amount that's being thrown around in free agency this offseason, there's plenty out there to go get. Alec Bohm's a guy that with those prove-it contract years, you just saw Ranger Suarez go through a great one. You just saw Kyle Schwarber go through an elite one. I think Bohm's going to have a better year, a more impactful year at third base. Right field, Adolis Garcia. He's a plus over top of Nick Castellanos simply because of the defense. I think they're generally the same player offensively. Just swap a little bit of pop for a little bit of contact. Pop in favor of Garcia, contact in favor of Castellanos. But Garcia is the much better defender, so already you're better there. Center field, Crawford to Bader, and what Bader was, I don't know. Crawford to Johan Rojas and Brandon Marsh last year, platooning in center. Give me Justin Crawford, even though he's never played a game at the major league level. The guy hit .330 at the minor league level last year at AAA. If he can't hit .270 at the major league level this year, especially if he's batting like 8th or 9th, I'll be damn floored. And he's a really good defender. They're better in center field today than they were on opening day last year. And then in left field, I guess that's a neutral, right? I mean, you can look at Max Kepler, and he was solid defensively, didn't really create offensively, but neither did Brandon Marsh for a big chunk of the season to lead it off. I don't know what Otto Kemp is. So let's just call that a neutral. But overall, and then the one guy we almost forgot, Kyle Schwarber. I don't expect him to have the year he had in 2025. That's not a fair expectation for him. But I do expect him to hit more than 40 bombs and have more than 100 RBIs. That's a guy that I'll have to say is like a step back, but not a noticeable step back. He's still going to be a monster in the middle of this lineup. I think overall you look at that and you say, okay, well, you're better at 1, 2, 3 positions. You're even at a handful and you're only worse in like 2 spots. And those 2 spots where you're worse are like, okay, you're not going to have an MVP caliber year from Schwarber and JT's another year older. The rotation, there are question marks, but even those downticks are me just betting on regression years, not like, hey, this guy stinks now and you've got him replacing an all-star. And the bullpen is guaranteed better. Guaranteed better. At least, well, okay. Let me slow down. On paper, the bullpen should be significantly better. Sometimes things don't go to plan. But that's my argument right there. The 2026 Phillies right now are better than the team you rolled into the 2025. I think, like, noticeably. Now, I don't think they win, like, 110 games or anything like that. I don't even know if they get to 96. But for all of the angst with the offseason, this team has more talent right now than they had this point last year. Does that make you feel good? Well, when the bar's the World Series, good isn't good enough. We've used that term. I'm going to continue to use it throughout the offseason and the season. But just a fun little breakdown there of how I view this team talent-wise compared to the team that won the division in 96 games last year. Now, can they win the division for a third straight year? That just got significantly tougher as the Mets acquire Freddy Peralta via trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll talk about how that affects the division and what the worry level is when focusing on the Phillies' 2 divisional rivals as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about TurboTax first, though, because tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax, they're making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. This is not you, I'm going to help and you're going to give me tips. Like, you remember that little paper clip that used to be on your computer that used to tell you, hey, maybe try this. No, TurboTax is doing it for you. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out the forms and all of that stuff that goes along with filing with the IRS, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. I've used TurboTax. I have both W-2s and self-employed forms. There's a lot of stuff that I need to get done. TurboTax makes it easy every time. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert's handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. TurboTax is important. The Everydayer Club is important as well. I've been telling you about this. If you haven't heard, we've got this great new thing that we're doing. You got to go check out our new Everydayer Club. So signing up for the Everydayer Club is going to take your fandom to the next level. It'll give you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Phillies, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. So you get a chance to listen to the episodes a little bit faster. You don't have to worry about ads. Great, right? Just like any other ad-free setup that you get for any other app. But it's also going to get you an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show and, of course, the hosts as well. So you get a chance to chat along with me or with other Phillies fans, or you can just look around the Discord channel in general and see what you want to chat about if you want to go talk trash to some Mets fans or anything like that. So go to lockedonphillies.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more and join the Everydayer Club. Take your fandom to the next level. Let's talk about the Braves, the Mets, and how the NL East has gone to the next level this offseason. We'll get to Atlanta. But the Mets go out and they make a trade for Freddy Peralta. So just this past 7 days, the Mets have signed Bo Bichette out from underneath the Phillies and acquired a high level, ace level to some, 1 or 2 to some others, Freddy Peralta from the Milwaukee Brewers. And they paid a sizable price for the deal. Don't take this as like, oh, the Mets, they got a steal here. They gave up Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat, their number 3 and number 5 prospects, respectively. So if anyone's like, oh, why didn't the Phillies do this deal? Okay, well, let's look prospects. Would you have given up one of Aiden Miller, Andrew Painter, and also Justin Crawford? I couldn't think of his name there for a second. In addition to another guy in your top 5 for Freddy Peralta, when you've already got Wheeler, Sanchez, Painter, Luzardo, Nola. No. I know people are concerned about the Phillies starting pitching. They're not to the level where they're going to shell out 2 top 5 prospects. But the Mets did. And they're clearly in a we are trying to win now mentality, as they've shown you under Steve Cohen for the past couple of seasons. But this is a big-time move because the Mets' number 1 weakness has been their starting rotation. Last year, you saw they started off red hot, and it was because their starting rotation was pitching well above their watermark. Then injuries happened, guys fell off. Next thing you know, they go from best record in baseball to losing the division by almost 10 games. It happens, right? When you don't have starting pitching that can withstand the course of 162 games, you are in major trouble. The Mets now have Freddy Peralta, a game-changing arm. They added Marcus Semien. They added Bo Bichette. They're changing a lot about the setup of their roster. They went out and they acquired Luis Robert Jr. I still think he kind of stinks. But they have a team that has just become significantly better to the point where the odds makers, let's talk about FanDuel, who often sponsors the show, they have the Mets now as the favorite to win the division. The Phillies are 3rd in the odds. But this is the tightest 1-2-3 in baseball. In fact, the margin in the odds between the Phillies and the Mets from 3rd to 1 is tighter than any margin for a 1st and 2nd place odds team in any division. So the NL East is going to be wild. That's that translation there. We know the Mets, they were leading the division for a lot of this past year before the Phillies made that late push and the Mets made that late collapse. A beautiful thing. Do I think the Phillies are the favorite to win the division this year? I would say yes. But, man, you can make an argument for the Mets and the Braves. The only thing with the Braves, as we just take a peek a little bit further south, is they're injury cursed. If you haven't seen, Ha-Sung Kim, who's supposed to be their shortstop this year, slipped on ice in South Korea and ended up having a tendon injury in one of his fingers, and he's out 4 to 5 months already. If the Braves stay healthy, they're an incredible baseball team. But they've been hit with the injury bug more than any team I can remember seeing in a while when it comes to Major League Baseball. So can I trust them to be healthy? I don't know, but they are talented. You can't write them off. They're motivated. We'll see what they do. But the Braves have all of the same cast members back and essentially healthy, besides Kim. The Mets have double-barrel loaded up, even though they lost Alonso, moved on from Nimmo, moved on from McNeil. They've brought in Semien, Bichette, Peralta. The Diaz thing is going to be really interesting because I don't know where their bullpen is overall right now and how much they trust that. But we'll see where they play out. The Phillies have their weaknesses too. It's just going to be the most interesting division in baseball is clearly right now the National League East. Now, the shame of it all is this could be a tooth and nail rock fight. And at the end of 162, it could be for the right to lose to the Dodgers. I hate to have that defeatist mentality, but for now, as we sit here on January 23rd and await a blizzard that could drop a foot of snow on Philadelphia, and baseball season, especially October baseball, feels so far away, let's just live in a world where we're going to have a really intriguing divisional race in the National League East this year. I'll still take the Phillies, but only because it's essentially a three-way coin flip, and I can make the argument anyway. So why would I not argue for my squad? But it's going to be a tough task. Don't expect the Phillies to just waltz their way to a third straight NL East division title. Now, are there going to be Phillies legends that waltz their way to the Hall of Fame? We talked earlier this week about the Hall of Fame voting. Chase Utley up over 50%, Jimmy Rollins receiving votes, Bobby Abreu receiving votes, Cole Hamels his first year on the ballot. I have an issue, though, with the Baseball Writers Association of America. I'll tell you about it coming up next, and we will talk about the off-the-poll results of how you, the fans of the Philadelphia Phillies, voted when it came to those four legends and their Hall of Fame credentials. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode. So, in case you missed it, the Hall of Fame class of 2026 was announced earlier this week. I did a full segment on my reaction to the voting and everything. I believe that was the most recent episode. So you can just go back and check that out. I appreciate that. And you can watch the show on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, I would love it if you could subscribe. We just went over 6,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. Why have so many people subscribed? Well, because it's free and easy. And because subscribing will get you notifications when new episodes are posted. So all it does is just let you know, hey, a new episode here. You said in the past you like this. Go check it out. Cost you nothing. Same with rating and reviewing. If you can't watch the show on YouTube, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're checking us out and just listening to us, well, if you could rate and review, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that as well, because all of that stuff helps us reach more Phillies fans and helps you find new episodes even easier. But our most recent episode, I believe it was, we talked about the Hall of Fame voting. Chase Utley was the third highest vote getter behind inductees Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. Then a little bit further down is Jimmy Rollins, then a little bit further down is Cole Hamels, and Bobby Abreu's in there too, in the mix, but he's been on the ballot for longer. So the chance that he finds his way in at this point, minimal. J-Roll feels minimal. Cole Hamels, first year on the ballot, getting nearly a quarter of the voters. That's a pretty good sign for him, which is shocking to me. Chase Utley over 50% and an over 20% jump from this past year in 2025, that's significant. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. That's what the trend's telling you, right? Unless, I don't know, he's the ambassador in London right now. Unless he commits like treason to the United States by selling like state secrets to London. I'm just making up some ridiculous scenario here. Like, the trend shows Chase Utley is going to be a Hall of Famer, which is wild. And I don't think it's reflective of how this fan base feels. Not that we don't love Chase, but I think the guy that we all loved the most from that team, or at least felt had the biggest impact on that team from an overall perspective, was Jimmy Rollins. He was the leader. He was. Cole was great on the mound. Chase Utley, incredible as his middle infield mate. Ryan Howard, the big piece, MVP caliber guy. But Jimmy was the guy who made that work. If you had to pick one, it was him. So why in the world is he not getting in? Well, I can't talk to you about that because I don't have a Baseball Hall of Fame vote. Writers, they cover specific teams. Some of them cover the league in general, but they all have biases. And I'm not saying that in a how dare you way. I'm saying that in a understanding of reality way. Like, if I had to vote on, I don't know, Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran, probably could, right? In division, Mets, Braves. But if you're asking me to vote on on Felix Hernandez, for example, who's currently on the ballot. Sure, I saw highlights. Yeah, I saw him throw his perfect game, not live, but I remember it. And then you look at the numbers, and that's what you do. You don't get a feel for what he meant to that city or that organization. That doesn't get caught in a 2-minute SportsCenter highlight package. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to let your voices be heard on who you believed was most deserving. So here's how I posed the question. Which of these Phillies legends is most deserving of a Hall of Fame nod at some point in the future? Doesn't mean you think they're getting in next year. Doesn't mean you think they're getting in at all. It means you think they're most deserving. So basically, like, if you had to pick one of the 4 guys to put in the Hall of Fame, who would it be? Very interesting results. Unsurprisingly, Bobby Abreu came in last with just 2% of the vote. Bobby Abreu was a guy who never got his proper respect here in Philadelphia because people thought he was afraid of the outfield wall. And every home run he ever hit was in a game that the Phillies were up 10-0 or down 10-0. Just a guy that didn't have the impact, right? He doesn't have the feel of a Hall of Famer from Phillies fans that watched him. Great player. Also wasn't really like on teams that won all that much. So that's the Bobby Abreu issue there. I totally understand that. He's not in the same category as these other guys who were big parts of the 08 run. Cole Hamels, only 11% of responders voted for Cole Hamels. No love for the pitchers around here? What's going on, folks? But I understand it. Like, Cole was awesome in 08. People blame him a lot for 09 having a major step back. The Phillies did go to the World Series that year, but how much better could they have been if Cole Hamels equaled what he did in 2008? Was that a fair bar? This is Locked On Phillies from circa when I was a freshman in high school. So we don't need to rehash that Cole Hamels 2009 World Series hangover argument. The point is this. Cole Hamels is a guy that had a great career, but he, from at least the Phillies fan perspective, doesn't seem to hold a candle to Utley and Rollins. Now, I'm shocked here because I assumed when I asked this question that Phillies fans were going to say, majority, Jimmy Rollins deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He got a sizable portion of the responses to vote for him, but only 41% of responders picked Jimmy. 46% picked Chase Utley. So more people in the fan base, according to this poll, would also put Chase Utley in the Hall of Fame. I think there's some, I think you're being affected a little bit by what's happening. There's some influence by the actual voting because I think some people have accepted that Jimmy's not going to make it in. I think some people see Chase making a big jump and saying, you know what? I think of Chase as a guy who could make it because the voters are telling me that, so I'm going to vote him on this poll. So I do think that influence exists there. And I do know Chase Utley was beloved, but it kind of bothers me that Jimmy Rollins could be left off. It almost feels like, so when I played, fun little story here real quick. When I played rec basketball growing up, My brother's a year younger than me. And every other year, the age groups, because it was 2 age groups at a time, would overlap. And my dad coached us. And whenever we were in the same age bracket, well, if he picked one of us, he had to pick both of us. If you picked another kid with a brother the same age, you got both. It almost feels like Chase and Jimmy, if one goes in, they both got to go in. Like, that feels wrong that you could go to Cooperstown one day and see Chase Utley's face on a plaque and not Jimmy Rollins. But the fan base is echoing what the voters are saying. Jimmy, yeah, we like him. We would put him in. 41% of responders here would put him in, but 5% more would vote Chase. Really intriguing. We'll see how it continues to play out. That will be the end of our conversation about the Hall of Fame voting this year. Until one of those guys make it in, we're not going to devote too much time to that. We got to worry about the 2026 Phillies and them winning something. And that is turning into a taller task by the day. But as I said to start off the episode, they're better right now than they were at this point in 2025. At least I think so. Let me know in the comments if you agree. And also, do me a favor. If you're in the Northeast, if you're here in the greater Philadelphia area, this weekend with the snow rolling in, be incredibly careful. Major winter storm. Make sure you're prepared. Take care of everything that you have to. Be smart. Be safe. Would hate to have anything, I don't want anything to happen to anybody. So prepare. And with that in mind, normally we record Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There may be a chance that I can't record Monday. I'll keep you updated on that via social media and everything. But thank you so much for always joining us here on Locked On Phillies. And I will talk to you on, we hope, Monday, unless the snow takes us all out, on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.